Welcome to the We Are CC podcast. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're changing up the cast. I'm Tom Crown, voted most handsome analyst of 2022, conducted by a poll by Poppy, only polling himself. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. You're a scholar and a gentleman. We also have, of course, the Warren Buffett of crypto, Poppy himself, a gentleman some might call a wizard of Oz. And Mr. who actually won't be joining us tonight as he's on the way to the Avalanche Summit. And luckily, don't fret, we've replaced him with another Mr. who will be joining us shortly. Mr. X, he's our editor. He has just got off of a AMA, something NFT related. Great guy. Great to have him. Don't forget, guys, you can check out our previous podcast episodes at weareccpodcast.buzzsprout.com. We got a lot of goodies there, so check them out after the live stream. This week, we follow up on some crypto trends. We're going to talk about some primates, revisit risk management. We're going to walk through some of Reddit. So, Mr. Poppy, let's go.
All right. Hey, happy Sunday, guys. One of the things I want to do a quick shout out to the analysts in the Discord. We run a weekly contest, and I just want to point out that I think I maybe was very close to winning this week. Trying to predict the weekly close price for Bitcoin. Always fun. So one of the things we were going to start off with was just revisiting the past week, some of the things that we talked about. So last week we were concerned about the Federal Open Market Committee. We were wondering just what they were going to come out with. We knew that probably they were going to come back and say, hey, we're going to be raising interest, rates. We knew that was going to come. It was a question of how much they were going to do it. And the news, most of you probably followed it. The news, I think, was probably the best that we could have hoped for. Tom, was in your opinion, was that pretty positive?
I'm a lover of chaos, so I had been predicting, or I guess we'll say predicting, that the Fed was going to walk back their hawkish stance, and they did not. I will say they did not. They had scheduled a 25 BPS or 0.25% rate increase for March, and I was wrong. I'll admit it. They went through with it, and I think the markets are pretty happy with maybe feeling some kind of certainty that the Fed is going to keep on schedule or keep their word. The reason I was saying that I thought they were going to walk it back is they kept using language throughout the last few years, and it just never really seemed to line up with their actions. And so I guess to see them follow through with it, the markets maybe took a breath of relief.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up because a common theme I've seen in how people responded to the Fed and the FOMC was that they don't have confidence that the Fed is going to really effectively tackle the inflation, that they're kind of that the 0.25 rate increase, that's in some ways kind of giving into the inflation because they don't think it's going to have a marked change in how things are going.
Well, their rhetoric definitely didn't change, saying, like inflation, they've said it didn't exist. They said it was transitory. It's like everyone's afraid to say the name, if that makes sense. They're just afraid to admit it exists. And some people actually, I live streamed it on YouTube, and some people were actually looking for a bigger rate increase. So maybe they were along those lines of thinking the way you are, that they aren't taking maybe an aggressive enough stance. I don't see how this 0.25 point is going to do anything in the short term. Maybe in the long term, sure. They did say they said there's going to be, this was some of the language, that there are going to be 7 more rate hikes this year. And that does line up with, there are 7 more FOMC meetings this year. So we might logically put those together and say we'll have one each month. What I'm curious about is, I think the markets are happy with the consistency the Fed finally has offered them here in this month. But now they're setting themselves up for the entire year of basically sticking to their word. Next month or the month after they decide to mix it up, that's going to give the market like a double dose of uncertainty, and markets do not like uncertainty.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed. And the rate increases, I talked about this last time, and I think it's a really big positive for crypto that we are even talking about this, that we, as in the our cryptocurrency subreddit, are sitting here on a podcast talking about rate increases and FOMC and the Fed. If you go back a cycle, I mean, sure, there was people talking about it, but it was a lot different. The discussions were a lot different. The maturity wasn't there. The experience wasn't there. And the understanding of how crypto kind of fit into the larger speculative financial markets wasn't as well understood as it is now. And I think that also removes some of that uncertainty where we've had months to price this in. We knew it was coming. The result so far has ended up being kind of a little bit underwhelming in a positive way for us, right? Maybe not so much for us at the fuel tank, but for us in the crypto space. And I think that's a kind of a reflection of that growing maturity of crypto, that we even care. And
I feel more mature. I watched it, so I feel more mature just by watching it. Pat myself on the back.
I would say I feel more mature, but the net maturity here goes down the more time I spend in the RCC Discord and Reddit. I'm sorry, it just.
We'll have to start reading the newspaper, the funnies, right? The Sunday funnies.
Well, and maybe one more thing on the rate hikes and FOMC before we move on to the next thing, but. One of the questions on everyone's mind is, hey, are we in a prolonged bear market? No one 100% has the answer to that. I don't think we are yet. But an interesting tidbit is, wasn't it in 2018 that we had the last round of rate hikes, and we had, I believe, 4 of them in 2018, and I saw this somewhere. I think it was probably in the subreddit. That someone mentioned that the peak capitulation was around the time of that 4th rate hike.
Well, certainly raising rates in a bear market is not what we've seen in the past. So we might be able to say we're in a bull market. I don't know if it works that way, unfortunately.
There's some technicalities to it, I think.
Yeah, so the next thing, okay, Russia and Ukraine. We know this is really every week. We're just gonna kind of circle back to this and see if anything's changed. My perspective, I don't know what you guys think. My perspective is that really nothing's changed in terms of the conflict. Nothing's changed in terms of how the markets are looking at it. Although I have seen a few articles saying that they think financial markets are starting to price in the conflict and the oil prices and everything else. I'm kind of the opinion that could lead people to complacency because it is a major conflict. Right? Volatility could always strike. But what do you guys think? Actually, let me take this to Mr. X first, because Mr. X, welcome. For those who don't know, behind the scenes, he's doing all the editing for these podcasts before we post them up for download. It's really great to have you on. So what are your thoughts on Russia-Ukraine in the past week?
The worst part of all this is that the people who really suffer are the people who really don't have anything to do with the conflict. That's what frustrates me the most. So like all these sanctions and anybody see the guy who chained himself to McDonald's or whatever because they were taking all the McDonald's away. And okay, that's kind of a weird example, but it's
the captain goes down with his ship.
Was it the manager? It could have been the manager.
I think it was just a big fan. I think he was just a big fan. Yeah. It's really just like people that are suffering over this, and it's nothing's going to get fixed because Putin's going to keep doing what he's doing. And from what I understand and from what I've heard and read is that Ukraine isn't going to be the end of this, and he's most likely going to push on to other places. And nobody wants to see that happen.
No, I think if that were to happen, there would definitely be a big shakeup in the markets, without a doubt. If this conflict were to extend outside of Ukraine, I mean, unless you guys disagree, I think that would be a big shock to the system.
Definitely something people aren't expecting, because I mean, the second they push us out of Ukraine, it kind of opens up a whole ballpark that I don't think the markets have really priced in yet, because I mean, you just really don't know what's going to happen after that point.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that could potentially lead to a real, you joke about the word, you throw the term World War III around, but that really could lead to such a conflict. So I really hope it doesn't come to that. But, I guess the question of whether or not financial markets are starting to price this in, maybe to some degree. I guess the longer something goes on, the more psychologically that you kind of come to accept it, the less, fearful you are of it. And so I think unless there's a sudden change in the rhetoric or sudden change, sudden escalation of force, that it's possible that financial markets are starting to kind of accept it. And along with the FOMC being a little bit less hawkish than it could have been, that might be a positive. Again, just speaking strictly from an investment perspective, that might be a positive for markets, might be a little bit of a relief. But I don't know. What do you think, Tom?
But the last episodes, it was kind of breaking news, and everyone couldn't believe this was happening. It was basically the consensus. And now we're talking about it as it's just another Sunday. We're still in this situation. So I think complacency is probably right where we're at with the issue kind of culturally. And spilling into other countries definitely would be a shakeup. And I actually wouldn't doubt, what we don't know if that's going to happen or not, but markets are likely already kind of looking to price that in, like the possibility of it at least.
Yeah, I think in general, markets tend to not seriously, but maybe moderately overreact sometimes. But what that sometimes can be a benefit. Like if we look at November, so if you were to pull up a Bitcoin chart, November is when the Fed chair, when Jay Powell came out and said, "Hey, guys, inflation's getting bad. I think we're going to have to start raising rates, but we're not going to do it yet. We're going to wait until, let's say, Q1, late Q1 2020. I forget his exact words, right? But he gave us time because he understood the fundamentals of how investors think, that they needed time to step out of their positions, time to price that in, to adjust their whatever, right? Their forecasts. And they did that. And you can see it clearly in the Bitcoin chart, because as soon as that comment came out, I actually posted this up on Reddit. You could see within 24 hours or so, that the market just started to hit that downtrend, and it just kept going and going. So when we finally got to that point where the rates started to raise, which was just this past week, and they came in a little bit less than expected, that was good for us because we overreacted a little bit. The markets felt good that it wasn't as bad as we thought. So going on to the next topic, this is a big pivot. We're going to talk about probably this, I think this, I hate to say it's the biggest news, but it probably was the most viewed news article of the past week in crypto space, which is apes. And we're talking about Bored Ape Yacht Club and the company that owns them, Yuga Labs. So for those, if you guys live under a rock, you may not have heard this, but Yuga effectively launched an APEcoin, and they airdropped it to Bored Ape, Mutant Apes, and all the other ape derivative projects that they have. They dropped those coins to all of those owners of those NFTs, and we saw some pretty wild volatility. One of the posts I saw even today, this is almost a week into it, we saw a post up today on Reddit from 666 Crypto God 420. Great name, sir. They brought up some good points, and we're gonna hit a few of these. So a little background: the coin was airdropped to all these folks early morning, like 8:30 in the morning, I think, on the 17th of March. Within 8 hours, that became the 110th most traded token on its first day of existence. Totaled almost $1 billion in trading volume across all platforms. And then within that first 24 hours, we saw what we like to call in the technical trading space, they dumped really hard on retail exit liquidity, which by exit liquidity, I mean everyone that was rushing in to buy at $20, $30, $40, and it seemed to have peaked around $40 before it dumped. And I think guys, do you remember, it was probably like a peak of like 80% drop into the second day?
I think it's Gemini I looked at it. They might have not gotten the whole chart, but I think it went up to $28, closed the day at 8 or 9, and then the next day traded down to like 720. So that is like that's a 75% drop there, even if that's not the full history. what kind of shocked me about this whole thing was just how many exchanges picked this up, like with what I assume is no notice. Like we see some pretty big exchanges just listed it within a few hours, and that's pretty uncommon. Even with established coins and things, when they do airdrops, sometimes I remember waiting for Ethereum Classic and for Bitcoin Cash on Coinbase for years, and they listed apes in I don't know, half a day, quarter of a day.
Yeah, I did think that was well. So let me, before I say this, let me say mad respect to Yuga, because these guys are killing it. They're absolutely killing it. Whether you love them or hate them, I know if you're a Bored Ape owner, and any ape owner or any derivative owner, right now you're huge fans of them because you just made a lot of money. But if we're talking more in terms of the crypto space, what this represents. I mean, this is really, to me, Yuga represents more of a Web 2 entity, more of a corporate entity than a traditional, maybe what we view like a decentralized or crypto native entity. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is that fair? Am I being a little bit unfair in how I view that?
Don't ask me, because I can't find my place in the NFT world yet. I'm looking. I know people are making lots of money and stuff, and whatever. Ape lost a bunch of money, and markets move around like that. But the NFTs are such a huge branch of the cryptoverse that I would have to like familiarize myself with, and I'm just not ready to do that because I know that there's utility hidden in there somewhere, but it's not a freaking trading card game. That's not going to be it. And so once these celebrities started shilling Bored Apes and stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, it was
out. It's a layered kind of thing, right? And then actually, this is interesting. I'm glad we have you on here, Mr. X, because there's always kind of a lot of people forget that there's these different, we'll call them submarkets, these different submarkets within crypto, right? Crypto is crypto, and that's a very wide and encompassing term. But within crypto, in my mind, the way I always view it is, right, you kind of have this like traditional crypto, which goes back to like the OGs, like Bitcoin, Litecoin. I would even take that all the way up until the point where, say, Ethereum was launched, and these people primarily trade coins and tokens. And then you have the DeFi space that really kind of came into its own late 2020, mid-late 2020. And now is kind of its own little thing that's growing, tentacles reaching out into the financial world. And then you have NFTs. And then even within NFTs, right, you have different markets. But a lot of people aren't active in all of those, or maybe they're only in some. I know some people are only NFTs. I see them on Twitter, and I'm honestly impressed. There's people who've made a killing only trading NFTs. I'm not really that good. But it is a very different beast. Each one of those is a completely different science. If you're farming, if you're doing like liquidity pools in DeFi or farming DeFi tokens, it's very different from like, say, day trading Bitcoin, which is very different from flipping NFTs. That it's just wild how much diversity there is in this space now. But yeah, I think that's. I do think that's a fair point. So when you talk about the APEcoin, it's only today, right now, we're talking about just its value today. All it is a DeFi governance token, a DAO token. It gives you voting rights in the Ape DAO, or whatever they call it. And given that, I mean, what do you guys think? Looking at kind of past performance in the DeFi space and looking at how other tokens have done, do you think that this is something that might hold value, or do you think this is something that's just going to be like short-term, kind of very volatile?
What would you be voting on? You know what I mean? Like, is it like, okay, we're going to add a different kind of hat?
You know the answer.
To this NFT. You know what I'm saying?
I don't like pink hats. I'm voting against it.
I don't understand. That's what I
mean.
It's like
that complex. I don't even think you'll get to vote on hat color.
Yeah, I just can't find the utility. I do want to say this. I can appreciate that people find value in NFTs. I'm not saying that NFTs are worthless, because something only has value if someone values it. If you value it, if you value your Bored Ape, awesome, great. They do mean something to someone, but I just don't see them being anything beyond like, some baseball cards that I have in the back of a drawer in my room right now.
What I want to warn or caution our viewers about is, so Poppy's probably correct. I'm by no means an expert on this, but that the coin is part of a DAO, which entitles you to some kind of vote, right? And that sounds awesome, doesn't it? Like that's how I see crypto, as like digital democracy, and that sounds amazing. But then you look at the coin, you look at the contract, and there's a billion coins, maybe. It doesn't even matter how many coins there are a billion coins, but there's only 131 million circulating. So the idea of having a say or a vote is like true, but super deceptive in the sense of your vote doesn't really count. 87% of all of these are locked up or, vested or whatever. They're controlled by someone else. Like the amount that they distributed to kind of any given person or whatever, I don't know, the vesting funds, I guess these coins are in, but it's 87% of them are in some wallets locked away. That doesn't really, voting kind of implies a fairness level, I think, if that's safe to say. Mm-hmm. But 87% of the voting power being out of the hands, I guess, of the people that have them, I really don't even understand how they can pull that off. Is not really voting in that sense. It's, you have one say, but there's 8.7 other says that are controlled by the creators of the coin or wherever these coins are. I don't know. Maybe Poppy can help us out with the DAO model.
Yeah. You bring up a very common issue. And so one of the, I call this one of the great challenges of our time. I was just having this discussion in one of the DeFi projects I'm involved in. Making so you're right, digital democracy. I love that, Tom. That's exactly the direction that we're going. That's the direction that we want to go. Making a model, just like in real life, right? There's always that kind of issue, voter apathy. There's that issue with incentivizing people, motivating people to go. Even when you make it a fair and balanced election, a lot of people just choose to kind of sit it out. And the same thing in DeFi, right? A lot of people are happy to just say invest in that protocol, whatever it may be, and never vote on anything. And for the most part, there's no punishment, right, for not voting. I've seen experiments in this. I think it was like Elastic DAO. They were experimenting with one where you only get rewards if you're actively voting. And there's also always the other risks, right? You have whales that could buy up a large chunk, or a protocol could buy up a large portion of the tokens and then drive the votes in kind of a nefarious direction or something to favor them. So there's a lot of layers to this. And DeFi hasn't quite conquered all of those issues. We want to incentivize voting, but we also want to make sure that if we're doing it through tokens, that those tokens can retain their value. And therein lies kind of the friction, because it's hard if you give them value, people want to sell, right? And so one of the things we've seen, and looking back, I did a kind of a little quick test. I looked back at December 2020. I found an article that talked about the hot DeFi tokens at that point in time to invest in going into 2021. And then I added a few more. I looked at the big players like Convex, Curve, Ohm. At different points in 2021, you would have looked at those and said, man, these are going to the moon. Guess what? All of these, the top tokens, per December 2020 article, the top tokens per how they perform through 2021, all of them are averaging a downside from their all-time highs of just over 80%. That's because DeFi has yet to kind of solve that entire dilemma. That's what I think of when I look at this ape token. It could have value because they're talking about a future metaverse, but that metaverse isn't released yet. We don't know if it's going to do well. It might flop. So right now, all it is today is some kind of general DeFi governance token. And I think that would just be a word of caution, right? Be careful. Know what you're investing in. It may not hold value. Just because Bored Apes are worth a ton doesn't mean that token will be. So be very careful about it. And I think even today, it's seen a little bit of support here, but it was like 73% down from the recorded all-time high. Obviously less depending on which exchange.
Going back to the metaverse bit, what project isn't saying they're going to have a metaverse?
Yeah, my God. Are people still buying stuff because they say metaverse at this point? Like, does everything have a metaverse, and where are they? Where's the metaverse?
Exactly. None of them have come to fruition yet. Like Shiba Inu, they were talking about having a metaverse like months ago, and yet what happened to it? Where's it gone?
We're actually going to circle back to this because I got some really interesting tidbits regarding the metaverse. But Oz, because I know your investments, what company or what metaverse does Bored Apes kind of have a linkage to? As they're talking about?
I think it's something to do with Sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
I think because Adidas, they collaborated with Adidas recently, and Adidas has a huge amount of land in the Sandbox, and they're one of like the first non-exchange big companies to actually really explore the metaverse properly, or at least the Sandbox metaverse. So I think if they do actually like bring this idea to fruition, then it will just be like a simple add-on game within the Sandbox world, rather than like their own separate functioning metaverse. Because realistically, I mean, I think it's a bit out of their depths there, and it would just take way too long.
One thing I would, if you don't mind me stepping in, Oz, I'd like to point out is that a lot of people that I talk to in the technical analysis room on Discord tend to lose perspective of the size of the tradable cryptocurrency market. Like, realistically, like, we're only slightly larger than Amazon's net worth in our entirety right now. So as far as like metaverses go, this does intrigue me. I'm not really captivated by all these like NFT pictures and stuff, but metaverse stuff, that is fascinating to me, because what I see happening there, what is Adidas doing there? What is New York Stock Exchange doing there? They're all taking their shot to grow into something bigger, because I think all of this is eventually going to grow into, you can all laugh, but it's going to grow into something like Ready Player One, where all these different metaverses are going to connect to each other, and we're all going to be interacting in these different spaces for different reasons and different themes and whatever. Again, this is all just in its infancy. It's funny to be like, okay, you know, Shiba's making a metaverse, but, you know, whatever, maybe 10 years from now, that's where we all hang out.
So it'll just be like
like
Facebook,
a crazy moonshot,
but with like really bad 3D graphics.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm in.
Well, to get back to the earlier point too, so this is, I won't call this alpha, but I'll call this important things to understand, especially when you have established corporate brands, of which there are many now in the NFT space, established corporate brands playing in the NFTs. APEcoin brands, who many of you may know, have a lot of different intellectual properties. They're helping Yuga Labs to build the upcoming metaverse. That's been established. Their co-founder is a member of the APEcoin Foundation, and APEcoin Labs owns Sandbox. So you do the math. Are you going to build your own organic metaverse, or are you going to invest in one that already exists? You could even do a fork of it. Do a fork of Sandbox, I guess, and call it ApeVerse. I don't know. What do you think, Oz? See, I knew you were the Sandbox guy. I thought you'd know this.
Yeah, I don't really like look into it that much. I just like investing and trading the tokens. I also do hold a bit of land though. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They're pretty much just buying their own bags at that point, or at least pumping them. But to be honest, APEcoin brands own like pretty much anything, or they have their hand in almost everything. You can look at literally almost every blockchain project, and you'll probably more than likely find an APEcoin brand logo on their founders list or investors list. So who knows really?
I'm just going to say, I think APEcoin, so when I was a kid, APEcoin, I think also owns the rights to my favorite cartoon as a kid, He-Man. If you guys are under like 35, you have no idea.
Masters of the universe.
Power.
Yes. If any of you are into like if you're Oz's age and you're into like retro 80s, 90s stuff, and you want to see some really funny movie, go find the He-Man movie with Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. Promise you, just, you know, and have a beer if you're old enough to have a beer and enjoy it. It's a fantastically bad movie. I do think that's a pretty good connection. So building your own metaverse, whatever it may be, we're starting to kind of gel a little bit on what a metaverse might be. I think building your own, a lot of people are realizing that's not easy. Just because you can buy some Unreal, you know, prefab stuff doesn't equal a fully functional metaverse. I mean, it takes years, literally years, to launch a proper AAA game, which is the closest comparison you can come to, right? Like an MMO, massive multiplayer online world. Those take years to build. And so for a lot of crypto projects, especially for those that are largely headed by crypto bros that may have real world engineering experience, it's still a huge undertaking, as we saw with Pixelmon, right? These things aren't easy to do. And even with Yuga Labs behind them, Animoca, I'm really curious. I would be shocked if Bored Apes go in a direction of making their own metaverse from scratch. So that being said, let me see. I'm looking at my notes. I think this is a good time to circle back into Reddit. Let's talk about some stuff going on in Reddit in the past week. First one is Tom Crown. You got to chat with Kevin O'Leary. For many people, that would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but you got to chat with him, ask him some questions. Any interesting insights from that discussion?
Well, I'm hoping it's a twice in a lifetime for me. But no, it was great. I'll say the only thing I really knew about Kevin before this was Shark Tank. And on Shark Tank, I liked him at times, didn't like him at times. My feelings, weren't really either way. Chatting with him, I was actually really impressed. For someone who isn't primarily a crypto person, kind of like maybe we are here and the listeners out there, you know who I'm talking about. They're not quite non-coiners, but they're somewhere in between. He was super sharp. He didn't call them Bitcoins. He had like the language down, and he seemed to have a good grasp on it. And what I really liked about the discussion was where his mind was when it comes to institutional investment and mining, and how essentially companies that can't really easily expose themselves, or wealthy individuals that can't easily expose themselves to the hard assets, the coins, have been investing in mining companies, which track pretty closely with Bitcoin. And they're fully able, fully regulated in that sense. They're just a company that's listed. And he had some interesting insights on the future of that and where he sees the problems for some of the current Bitcoin mining companies, and kind of offered where he's looking to invest in the future with companies that are already seeing those problems in the future and kind of preemptively preparing for them. So it was a really cool conversation. I still can't believe I talked to him. It was wild.
That was really cool. I liked that episode. And he was very comprehensive about the tokens and coins and stuff that he was talking about, because like you can tell that he's into it. He's definitely into it. And he's not just like whatever shilling for publicity or anything.
And I had friends even reach out to me afterwards who I didn't even tell about this. And they had never asked me about crypto before. And after seeing Kevin O'Leary and hearing Kevin O'Leary just talk about it, it became a much more real concept for them. They were like, all right, I think it's time for me to invest. So that is definitely a positive for the space. I guess kind of just seeing a successful traditional financier take it so seriously and come off with such confidence and intellect, I think that is inspiring maybe for people who haven't pulled the trigger yet.
Yeah, and it's also a reflection of that convergence of kind of TradFi and crypto. Is you're going to see, I think you're going to see more of this. People like Kevin O'Leary are kind of early movers, and he even has it's like a DeFi protocol that he backs. I didn't know about that until I started Googling around. And I honestly, I forget the name off the top of my head. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was pretty respectable. It was actually a decent interface, had a nice selection of tokens. I think it did require me to sign up with my email, though, which was a little weird. If you've been in the DeFi space, normally you just log in with your wallet, right? But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. So I think that was a good talk. And I hope you guys, what we do on the side is we do have a lot of AMAs. We have other discussions. Please tune in. It's always a good time. Always a lot of interesting things. You might even pick up a little bit of alpha. So the other thing we did just before this was an AMA with FriesDAO. And Mr. X, you were spearheading that one. Anything interesting? I mean, these guys are buying up McDonald's and turning, kind of like decentralizing the ownership of that. I think that's pretty wild.
Yeah, I love that idea, man. Like I said on the AMA, it reminds me of when I first heard about tokenized stocks, and now we're moving into like tokenized businesses. And I'm thinking like all the employees who work at a place suddenly have the opportunity to share ownership in it and decide to give themselves a raise, and whether that's profitable for the whole company, and just like keeps rolling into all these huge, beautiful ideas about how economies could work in a decentralized fashion without, all these problems that we run into, like whatever greed, embezzlement, or fraud, or whatever that happens sometimes in management of a company. If you got the people who are working there, or at least the people who, maybe live in the area or that are all collectively making a profit off of this same business, then yeah, they all want to see it flourish. And nobody wants to be the one guy who tries to steal from the company, because it'll be super obvious, because you can't really do it in a decentralized fashion like that, And so I'm enthralled with this kind of idea, and I would love to see more projects develop on this sort of thing in the future.
Yeah, that got me thinking about, I even posted it into your chat, what if you just open that up to other industries? I mean, any industry is fair game at that point. I guess you just circle back to it. A DAO almost bought a copy of the U.S. Constitution, right? So what can't they do? I mean, it's just wild. So, okay, so we're going to get into a little bit of the other Reddit posts from this week. So this one is, I think this one's kind of relevant given what we just talked about. Big86 posted about interest in NFTs waning. And I okay, on one hand, I do think that that's a valid point. Certainly Google Trends reflects that people are searching for NFTs less. And on the other hand, people are searching for crypto less. People are searching for investing less. It's kind of an awkward time in the market, right? A lot of uncertainty, war, other things. But before I open it up to comments from you guys, I do want to say an important note. You guys are the true degens. And by degens, I mean, if you're still here and you're still trying to learn the market, learn how to trade, learn analysis, you are going to make it. Trade smartly. Be that guy that you bumped into that had bought a bunch of stuff in a bear market and retired, in early 2021. That this is now, not saying go and ape and mortgage your house and buy a bunch of crypto, but now into the future, while the market is down, that's when the big money is made. That being said, NFT market down, what do you guys think? Is this really a lull in the market, or are we about to see things pop off, or NFTs just disconnected from normal crypto altogether?
I think it's interesting to see. However, if you also look at it, just to the general community, the activity on Reddit is down, the activity on Discord is down, the markets are down, stocks are down, literally everything is down right now. So I think it's a mix of both, because currently, well, it's not really a bear period, but it kind of is at the same time, because we've been downtrending for so long. People just tend to lose interest. So the initial hype that was building up is kind of just fizzling out now, because people are getting bored of it and the crazy runs. You still have some NFTs that make crazy runs and have a lot of activity with them, but the amount that we had in like summer going into winter of 2021 was just crazy, and we haven't really seen that before. It kind of reminded me of like the DeFi buzz of 2017. I think it may come back at some point. However, I think we'll kind of need to wait for the general markets to clear up and have a more positive tone to them.
Yeah, true. I agree. I think it's the hype thing. I think the hype is wearing off, and there's going to be small groups of people who are enthralled with whatever specific project that they love, or projects that they love, or people who just love trading NFTs, just like there's people out there who love trading card games and so forth. Other than that, I don't think there's the utility in pictures that's going to carry it through to this world-changing technology yet. So,
and I'm curious, what do you think, Tom Crown? Because I would say out of all of us, you're really the closest to a kind of traditional crypto purist. I made that term up just now.
I liked it. Well, I'll say that I'm looking to add about as many NFTs as I bought, and whenever, if we are or aren't in the bear market, which is none. I respect people, and I love NFTs because they have brought a lot of interest to the space. I think without a doubt they were a huge player, and I don't see the NFT space going away. I think it's going to evolve into something else, though. I don't think the way it is right now is kind of its final form in Dragon Ball Z terms. But man, at the end of the day, for me, it's a lot of these NFTs are on Ethereum or Polygon or wherever they are, and I own those coins. And for me, that's enough. As someone who's been in this space, I'm really not interested in kind of dipping my toe into, how many projects. It would almost be like kind of buying every altcoin that comes out. It's just not for me, maybe. But there certainly could be, waves in the future of people who it is for. I didn't expect it to be what it was in 2021, and it still was huge. So, there could be more in the future there. It's just part of the market, larger than just NFTs, maybe larger than just cryptos. As things get very hot, they boil, that energy goes away and they kind of simmer, and eventually the energy comes back. And at the moment, it seems we're kind of at one of the maybe the simmering or the cooling points for markets globally, probably.
I think that's an interesting analogy, but I think it's true. You guys are all right that just overall financial markets are kind of a decision point. They're waiting to see what happens. I think the narrative short term has been a little bit of relief, a little bit, but the long term or even the midterm uncertainty is still weighing on everyone. I will say, as perhaps the one that's most active in NFTs, although certainly not a professional NFT trader, I think that there's going to be some prevailing themes that come out of this cycle, right? We're seeing this even with Bored Apes are a little bit late to the party, but not too late. They're recognizing that the next generation of NFTs need to have that utility. People harped about utility so much in 2021. 2022 is when it happens. And so for example, one of my favorite projects that I play in is a DeFi protocol, but they're integrated with NFTs. And so, I bought a few of the NFTs and I use that to amp my stable coin investment in them. And then I'm now getting more return on my investment just by owning those NFTs. I thought that was a clever way of doing it because now those NFTs hold value. That's kind of cool because people want them, right? They want them. They sold out quick. They want them so they can amplify their returns as well. But also I'm getting more just on having basically US dollars sitting in there earning me money while I wait for the market to kind of give me a clear signal. I call that a win, right? But the other one is also the Metaverse. And the Metaverse, you can't walk away from it. I put quite a few notes in here. I know you guys are going to look at this. If you didn't look at it earlier, it's a lot to take in. But the Metaverse thing is crazy. I'm seeing headlines about this, even though Metaverse isn't even fully defined yet. I mean, it's kind of starting to gel a little bit, but it's like everyone from banks to corporations to my Uncle Roger are investing in Metaverse on some level. I was looking, at the news and I saw this guy from Microsoft. His position is he leads the department or division at Microsoft that looks at future of work, how to enhance productivity in the future, how people are going to work in the future. And they've been doing a lot of studies since COVID hit because basically COVID accelerated that transition to a future work model, the remote work. If any of you have been in the workspace as long as I have, I think I've been in it more than anyone on the call, but not that much longer. A lot of, we'll call them boomers, were very averse to remote work. They hated it. Before COVID, the idea of most of or all of your workforce working remote, it was like they were going to kill over and die if you mentioned it. When COVID forced their hand and companies were still as productive as before, it really changed things. This guy, where'd I put his name? Jared Spataro. You can look him up. You can Google the article. I'm not going to go through. He did some interviews, but he was talking basically about how Microsoft, perhaps arguably one of the most important company in terms of worker productivity in the office in like white collar work. He's talking about how they're looking at the metaverse for the future workplace. And he actually outlined 3 points. So one of the things he first mentioned was the first stop would be to add avatars, digital avatars. And what do you think? Are we there yet? Do we have some form of digital avatars? I mean, would you consider profile pictures on Microsoft Teams? I mean, would that qualify?
I mean, it's super obvious this is inevitable because, okay, look at precisely how COVID affected the workforce, not only in the United States, but across the world. How many of these jobs need to be in an office? You know, not all of them.
Most of them don't.
In fact, most of them don't. There's so many jobs that can be moved to the home where you can interact with an avatar or whatever on a metaverse. It doesn't make any difference, you know, if it's like a 2D representation of your cubicle or if you're whatever, a 3D Loch Ness monster in a room with a bunch of other weird people, right? It doesn't make any difference. As long as the job is getting done, that's what actually matters, right? And so I think it's inevitable. I think it's a great idea. I think it's going to save companies a ton of money, and it's going to allow people to, you know, make better wages because of the money that these corporations are saving, potentially, if they don't decide to keep it for themselves, like what usually happens.
You think that the future is virtual? You know, it's and honestly, so my life before crypto, I was advanced enough in my career where I kind of drifted into management. If you guys are white collar, you're professional, some particular expertise, beware. You'll eventually get pigeonholed into management, probably, if you stick with it long enough. But when COVID first kicked off, I, you know, as a millennial, even I had a concern about that inability to see my team kind of in real time, walk into, you know, their cubicle, their office, sit down and talk to them. And then the people older than me, say 50, 60, even some 70-year-olds, they were really uncomfortable. Once we got settled in, though, Microsoft Teams just fundamentally was good enough. But certainly there is something that could be better. There is a lot that I'm going to admittedly say is missed in a chat. Sometimes your tone, your intonation, your whatever you're trying to infer, there's a lot of subtle cues that a human gives off when they're talking, you know, in person that you struggle with over a chat. And I guess these are the things we're talking about that the metaverse could solve. But if you think about it, the things that this guy who probably has studied the future of productivity, the future of the workspace more than almost anyone on the planet. And he's saying the first step is to have a kind of digital avatar to represent you in that space. Because at the end of the day, you know, just your initials or something, right? Or no profile picture at all. That doesn't really represent you. And even a picture of you may not be the most accurate representation. Anyone can take a headshot. But to have some kind of avatar that kind of expresses who you are, because humans, people, we like to be expressive. We also like to flex a little bit. Maybe we like to be stylish, whatever it may be, right? So avatars are important. And I think it's interesting that that's also the direction that NFTs went. What was the first thing that really popped off? 10K collections of PFPs. People invest a lot of money into their profile picture. So the second thing that they talked about was augmented reality. And this is really the ability to project digital things. You could use your phone. You could use a camera. You know, I've even seen this. I think stuff like Amazon, can't you, like say you want to look at a couch, you could put your camera up to your living room and overlay a couch in there, right? Has anyone tried that?
Yeah, I've heard of that too.
It's actually pretty accurate.
Have you tried it, Tom?
Yeah, we got a couch and we were able to see it in our house before it was there. It's pretty cool.
It is kind of wild. I'll admit I haven't tried it. I've just heard of this. But I know the wife loves IKEA, and I think they also have an app for that. But that could actually change business in a lot of ways. Or think about fashion, right? Maybe you stand in front, you put your phone up, and you do, you know, try different outfits on while you're on camera and see how they look on you, or new haircuts, or maybe a new car in the driveway. Get that Lambo, you know, AR version.
I think it's a good first step. But I mean, if anybody's ever seen a movie that depicts the future, we do that without any additional equipment. And so you're just standing in the room, looking in the mirror, and the dress just shows up on you without having to look through your phone and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it's a great first step to start feeling out that sort of technology. But, you know, again, like we said before, not its final form.
We need holograms.
Yes, sir. Holodeck is the end game, guys. That's the goal here. That's what we're all doing. We all want a holodeck. Don't lie to yourself.
If you guys haven't watched Star Trek, so in Star Trek, this is getting a little nerdy, right? But in Star Trek, they have these holodecks that you can basically interact with artificial intelligences that are crafted into some sort of touchable 3D holograms. I always wondered how those people don't just spend all day in the holodeck and get addicted to it, like people in World of Warcraft back when I was in college.
I feel like Star Trek they don't want you to see.
Yeah, for so many reasons, right?
For every reason.
It would be so addictive. If I had a holodeck,
it will be. I think is what we need to say. It will be. It's coming.
Mm-hmm. And so the final part of this actually is what we're just talking about, which is according to Microsoft. This isn't Poppy talking. This is Microsoft saying that the final step is fully immersive virtual reality. He's saying that this one will take a little bit longer. Well, no surprise there. Supposedly the technology is impressive, according to this guy. I really doubt that. I have seen some cool videos. I've tried VR myself, and then promptly vomited afterwards. That was Resident Evil. That thing just watching your body move, but you're not moving. That just threw me for a loop. I couldn't do it. Have any of you guys tried VR yet?
No, not yet. I want one so bad though.
I have an Oculus Q. I don't know, not the new one, and it's like it was a gift, so I don't want to talk badly about it, but it was just too crappy to play. Don't tell anyone I know, please.
Hope they don't listen. What about you, Oz? You're the young guy in here. Surely you've been playing with VR.
Yeah, I mean, VR is actually a thing I'm looking into a lot right now because I'm planning to use it for my company. I've played around with VR quite a bit. I used to play VR poker rooms, and I think VR chat on Oculus, that was quite popular for quite some time, which is actually something that people compare to the Metaverse quite a bit. So yeah, it's quite fun.
I think a lot of people don't realize how far VR has advanced. It's advanced quite a bit. There's a large gaming segment and a large social segment to VR. And so integrating it into a metaverse, truthfully, probably isn't a big leap at this point. I don't think it would be.
Yeah, VR kind of grew really quickly. I think in the space of a year or two, from the Oculus 1 to the Oculus 2, I can't remember which one specifically, but there's the difference when you change between the headsets is crazy.
When it first came out, I thought this is gimmicky as heck. It was, yeah. But it's blown me away since then. Even if it did make me sick, other stuff has impressed me thoroughly. I know we're coming up on an hour. I did want to hit this final note, and then we'll jump into the questions. So this one is from Ornery Maintenance 8, and it sounds like you suffered from that issue of Reddit default names that you could never change. I ran into that. That's how I ended up making a second account. When people always wonder, why is this Poppy guy in the subreddit with mod powers, but he has no karma. So there was actually two posts. There was one from him and there was one from Nick83487, and they're talking about basically buying at the all-time high. One of these was talking about how people who bought at the all-time high are salty about other people now enjoying the current price action. And then the other one was saying we should celebrate the people who bought at the all-time high, because without them, we wouldn't drive to new highs. And I don't know that would make me feel better, but I really, really love that headline.
Thanks for leaving all that money on the table, guys.
So look, there's an element of this that relates to risk management. And, we've said it before, but you know how smart money handles these markets? They sell on the way up. They sell a lot earlier than you realize. You could go and look up when miners enter or exit positions, and you'll see that they do it at the earliest signs of strength in the market. They know that they're going to make money. They know that there's a lot of bullish sentiment, but they don't know how long it's going to last. That's the mystery, right? They're not going to try to time the top. They're going to sell into the strength. You can learn from that. DCA doesn't just apply on the way in, it applies on the way out too. You don't have to sell everything at once. And I see you guys, in fact, Oz, I see you guys, in the day trading side, you guys talk about that, right? Like if someone wants to take profit, what's a good strategy on the day trading side? If you're not sure, it might go a little bit higher, it may not. Like, what would you guys do?
I mean, really, the best thing that I normally do, because it just works so well, is every time there's like a 1 or 2% pump, just take out some of the profits. Like, it doesn't need to be a crazy amount. It could be like 5%, and you can start building up a pot until eventually, at the top, when it starts retracing, you can finally be out and you can be risk-free and stress-free because you can just ride the wave down and casually buy back the bags you sold. I think the key thing is you don't need to sell the top when you do this because you can just average your sell orders along the way. And, once you reach the top, eventually you're going to get a sell order close enough and you already have a fairly large pot of money to spend on the way down. So there's not really any concern there.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Tom, you stepped out, but on the off chance you were still hanging around, any thoughts? Because you're more of a long-time investor. Any thoughts looking at cycles, like how you would exit a position?
Yeah,
Right.
I think he's gone.
And to confirm, yes, so the same thing applies to spot. So if you have a long-term position, you're trading a cycle, maybe you bought, during a bear, say you bought now and you're just waiting. You're just going to hold that bad boy, hold whatever it is. Maybe you bought one Ethereum and you're going to hold that until the next cycle top. Don't wait for the top. Maybe sell 10, 20% of it, based on how much it's rising, right? When you're in profit, you're in profit. Take the money. There's no shame in it. This is the hardest thing that anyone has. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, hey, the next time Bitcoin makes an all-time high, I swear to goodness, I'm going to sell that Bitcoin, even if I didn't the last 1, 2, 3, 4 times, then you know what I mean. And that is, taking profit is the hardest thing any crypto trader has to do because it's easy to get greedy. It's easy to say, oh man, it's already up, 100%, 200% more. I want to retire. If this thing goes up to 1,200%, I can retire. Well, first, it's probably not going to, because if you're feeling that kind of way, so are other people. Everyone's greedy. That sell-off's going to come before you ever hit that magical number, because most likely you bought in at the same point as other people too. Again, human psychology isn't that different between individuals. There's a lot of patterns that happen in crypto, which is why markets tend to follow a trend. I think the lesson here is don't be shy. Take profit when you can. And I think this other note, this is an important one, especially as, I'm not just an analyst on the RCC Discord. They give me like weak moderator rights. So I have to moderate a little bit. You do see some people are kind of jerks sometimes in social media. If it's Reddit, if it's Twitter, if it's Discord. Look, crypto is stressful, man, woman, everyone. It's a tough place to be. Don't be a jerk. Don't be mean to people just because they bought at the wrong time. Everyone's been there. I guarantee you, there's no one with 100% win rate. If you're shitting on someone because they made a bad move, maybe judge yourself first, because you've probably made that same move in the past. Kindness goes a long way in this space, and I really want to stress, we're all in this together. We're really a small community. Crypto is not that big yet. I know it's starting to hit those early stages of mass adoption, but we're early. Be kind to each other and make crypto a little bit better of a place. It's a lot more fun when, you're friends with everyone. And think about this. If anyone's really underwater, those 2018 guys and ladies that held all those years, they were rewarded for it. Even shit, pardon my language, but even shit coins from that period pumped like crazy. So just hold on. I mean, worst case, I'm not guaranteeing success, but that's what I would do. I would just hold.
Another thing I want to add also is we're kind of all in this together. There's always going to be somebody that bought at the exact same level as you. And while it's sometimes good to think outside of that we're not all in this together, we effectively are. People are going to benefit from both sides, but in the long run, most people in crypto are going to want to see each other's success. And just want to correct you, Pappy, not everyone has 100% win rate, but El Champ has 99%, so he takes a crown, I think.
Oh, yeah. He's clarified though. He's clarified. It's not. It's like 80 something. But for those who don't get the inside jokes don't work on podcasts. There's a gentleman who is, I'm gonna say, he's quite savvy on the market. So we've never seen the bot, but he does claim like an 80% something win rate.
Yeah, we love El Champ. He's the GOAT.
Love you, champ.
Gotta love everyone in this space, good, bad, and different. I love all you guys. So
That's why I like the upvote downvote feature on Reddit, and I don't really hang out. I left Twitter and Facebook like a year ago and never looked back, and now I'm pretty much strictly Discord and Reddit. And you can when that jerk comes in, that troll comes in and just says something that's just blatantly obnoxious, the whole community can jump on it and downvote that so far that it actually closes the comment and you don't even have to read it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good feature.
Thing. Yeah, I love that.
yeah, social media. Yeah, we're getting into kind of a different thing, but social media can be a little bit stressful. The anonymity that it offers lets people be a little bit more of jerks. And like, you probably wouldn't be like that around your kids, your wife, your friends, your family, but online, boy, you are crazy. You are crazy. You are crazy. You are crazy. You are crazy.